My home is the nation's capital. It is a place of history, of American history, of Black history, of many histories of people moving through places and sharing ideas and thinking about the world. I grew up in the 60s, so I grew up at a time when D.C. was the site of some major speeches and activities to support human rights. So my family's from rural Virginia outside of Richmond, but as they moved to Washington, D.C. as part of the Great Migration. In 1960, I was born in 60, so I came, they moved to D.C. They brought me with them. My older brother came later. And so D.C.'s home for me. Is where I learned to walk, is where I first went to school, where the neighborhoods I walked through. The Chesapeake for me is, it is kind of a place of writing, rest, and friendship. When I think about my parents' home in D.C., their home in Petworth, on Webster Street, and it was a house that had a covenant. They purchased it, and the covenant, which was illegal because of desegregation, and said that the house could not be purchased by Negroes, Jews, and that no dogs. It was a Black neighborhood, a very solid, strong Black community of people who cared for each other. When my parents moved to the city, and I was the only girl, and when I was walking to school, just say when I started school and I needed to walk to school, my mom was working, so she couldn't quite get me there. So she was trying to figure out, and Dad, of course, was working. He couldn't get me there, so we were trying to figure out how to do it. Knocked on the neighbor's door, and they had daughters, and I walked to school with their daughters. And I grew up thinking those daughters next door were my sisters because we were just so close. Mom was making the biscuits and Dad was frying the fish. You know, we could go to neighbors, just knock on the door like, hey, we need got a cup of Crisco or something. But there was this incredible rich community that I definitely feel the change. I definitely feel a shift. And I feel that as my parents have both passed now, and kind of that community around them, because most of those people that were friends of theirs that I grew up around, they're gone. They're no longer here. For some of them, their children took over the homes. My brother lives in one of the homes that we had in Petworth. And that's beautiful for me to see, because I see some of the places that were really meaningful, they're gone now. They've been torn down, and what's put into place is some multi-floored building. I don't know what it's like inside, but I imagine that the space is very small. The school that I went to no longer exists, but it was called the Lemuel Penn Center. And it was a school for kids who wanted to be in literary arts. It ran a magazine, it ran a newspaper, it had photojournalism. So I went there for much of my day. But then I would go to Roosevelt in the afternoon for some core courses. But much of my time was spent at the Penn Center, the Lemuel Penn Center. And it was interesting because the way we studied government there is not in a book. We were reading news articles, looking at policy, thinking about policy, talking about policy, and then going to the Hill. Yeah, going to congressional hearings. Again, I was really exploring the city in a different way, but also exploring the city as a point of public policy and really feeling connected to D.C. as the nation's capital. I think when I was at the Lemuel Penn Center, I did a few pieces. At one point, I was in the photojournalism program there, And I was walking through neighborhoods, and then at the end of the day would go down by the Potomac and just kind of sit with my notes and write my notes. So I would say that the first pieces that I wrote were related to kind of a bit of the cityscape, and then what it means to me and what happens in this place. So I may have been writing about, an event in the community, or writing about just the meaning of Rock Creek Park.
I know you've worked in the public affairs work system and communications, and you're a multimedia artist. Do you have any advice for Black girls who want to pursue any lane of those two?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing is what I've said to the young people in my family and the young people in my life. First of all, follow your bliss, dream, and follow your dreams, because you will always be rich and enriched by that. Okay? So if visual art is the way you want to tell stories, explore. The city has wonderful resources. We have just a beautiful landscape, a beautiful cityscape, beautiful green spaces, beautiful neighborhoods with beautiful people who live in them, and beautiful architecture.
Amazing.
Yeah, so explore it. Sit on porches, say hello, talk to people, and don't forget the elders on the porch, or maybe they're on the back porch. Say hello to them. Ask them what it feels like. Ask them for a memory. My career took many paths because I've worked in communications. I worked in public affairs media, and I worked in corporate affairs media relations, and I worked on the Hill as well. But in that, I always felt that I was in spaces where I got to be a storyteller, I got to listen to stories, and I worked with and for some great storytellers. People who were passionate about the community and thinking about their place in the community, thinking about the shoulders that we stand on, those building blocks of who we are, and making sure that it's not forgotten. Those people and their journeys and their efforts here in DC and their efforts that may extend beyond DC were not forgotten. So I think it's always been with me in different ways. And for me, part of that too is I was always excited about working in public affairs broadcasting, because what it instilled in me was this issue of access. I want access to opportunities. And so writing today, and frankly being part of Hurston Wright Foundation and what they're doing here with the work with Black writers, I feel very much connects to this idea of creating an access point, a safe space for Black stories. They're both real HU. And I think that that's measured in the people that go there and graduate from there. Both have very special places in my heart.
That's a great answer.
But I gotta say, I love my Howard HU.
HU?
You know.
Yes. That's all my time I have.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So what do you do with these? Do you write them up, or?
Well, I like writing mine up.